All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. I'm Brandon. I head up the marketing team here at Runway, and we have a very exciting session that we're going to cover. So before we get started, I just want to give everyone a heads up on some housekeeping items. One, this session is recorded. So if by chance you're joining late and want to go back and look at the content or you missed it, we'll be sharing a recording after today's session. You can also always join the same link in your calendar invite where you'll be able to access the recording after. Additionally, we have a chat box and we have a Q&A window on your right-hand side. If you wanted to test your chat, actually, Nicolas was telling us that this is probably the most globally attended and registered session that Runway actually we've ever held. So if you wouldn't mind, if you want to just type in the chat where you're dialing in from, that'd be great. I'd love to see all the cities. I myself am dialing in from Los Angeles. There we go. Denmark, Toronto, Swamish, Munich, Maryland. Yeah, Nicholas is right. We definitely have a global audience. Awesome. Well, appreciate everyone joining from wherever you are in the world. And if you have questions that come up, we will have a dedicated Q&A section at the very end of today's session. And so for whatever reason you wanted to, if you have a question and wanted to pop it in the Q&A panel, that'd be great. And we will be sure to spend some time answering those questions at the very end. With that, today's topic is around artificial intelligence. AI is impacting every single role over the last 2 years, everything from engineering to marketing to finance. And I believe it's one of those muscles where we really have to continue to build. And to do that, we need to invest in learning and being able to stay tuned to the latest tips and tricks on how to apply this in our everyday. And today, we're going to do just that. So we have two very special guests. I'm going to introduce them, pull them on the stage now, and then we'll go through introductions. Nicolas Boucher and Siki, how's it going?
Hey, Brandon, good to see you.
Good to see you both. Before we kick it off, I'd love for both of you just to introduce yourselves to the audience. Nicolas, let's start with you.
Yeah, hi everybody, Nicolas. So I am here in Germany, but I'm French, as you can hear with my accent. I'm a finance guy first, but over the last 2 years, I've really dedicated myself to train finance teams on how to use AI for finance. And I'm sharing also that with more than 1 million people across social media every day.
Awesome. It's great to have you, Nicholas. Hey, everybody, I'm Siki. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO here at Runway. We're building a finance platform that makes finance accessible, understandable to everyone on your team.
Awesome. Well, we're very excited for today's session. I won't drop some names, but both Nicholas and Siki have some incredible, influential people following them on social media. With that, Nicholas, you have some slides prepared, so I'm going to pass it to you, and I'll hop off stage, and I'll come back for the moderated Q&A session.
Awesome. Good. So, Siki, should we starting?
Yeah.
So what do you want to know about how to use AI for budgeting and forecasting?
Well, there is a lot of hotness, a lot of hype around AI, and you run the largest AI finance community probably on the planet. So I think a lot of companies are really excited about using AI for budgeting and forecasting. So maybe we can start with what are some real opportunities and challenges people should think about when they're starting to use AI?
Yeah. So if we think about using AI, it's not new that finance is using AI. What is really new is that each individual themselves have access to the LLMs where they can use their own words to use AI. And I wanted today to show at 3 different levels. So level 1, when you just use ChatGPT and Excel, for example, meaning you don't really change the way you work, you just get ChatGPT to help you to do your forecasting. So that's the level 1, and that's what I'm going to show after. And then level 2 is starting to make actually AI automate our processes, because instead of writing ourselves the formulas, we want AI to basically code for us the work. And the third step I wanted to discuss with you and also have insights from you as a builder of the new generation FP&A tools and financial planning tools on where is the, I would say, like the future going on the tools and what will be available for people or what is already available. So I don't know if you're excited about that and if I should show straight away the demo.
Oh, yeah, let's do it. That sounds like a great plan.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and what I want us to start with, sorry, is so how to use it with Excel, because we are not going to be able to take Excel away like this from a lot of finance people. And I think to also increase adoption, we need to start by easy task. And when we think about that, one of the planning tasks that is the most demanding, and it's across all businesses, is to forecast headcounts. And I've worked 15 years in finance, and I remember that each time somebody was new with this process, it was really a cumbersome task, really hard to do. So instead of like spending months of working on that, you could really accelerate the process by using ChatGPT to help you work on that. So here you can see that my prompt is I have an Excel with actual headcounts, and I want AI and ChatGPT here to give me a model on how to build that. So let's see what we can get. And I use the new version of ChatGPT, the O1 preview, which basically resonates and think about the problem really hard to give me the output. So as you can see, when I scroll, it shows me all of the steps of the model and how to build this model with on top also the formulas. I even have like sensitivity analysis, propositions, and how to visualize it. So in just one small prompt, I have really like the blueprint and the roadmap on how to start building this. But what I like on top is also to have something concrete and to have template that I can send to the other departments and HR to collect information. So here, again, it thinks really hard about the problem using the reasoning. And when we have the output done by ChatGPT, we have first the HR information template. So I need to collect the assumptions. I need to collect some key parameters from HR. And the same for the department heads. I need to collect from them the number of employees they want to have, the departures, the arrivals, the salary adjustments, and some maybe skills and trainings needed. And here I can even have an example if I want to show to my colleagues how this should look like. I have here those examples. And I did that to prepare, so to tailor the webinar today on the topic. And it was my first answer. So I didn't like tweak 1 hour to get the best output. It was the first answer. And I didn't give any additional context on my company, but you can improve that by just explaining what is the company you are working for, maybe a SaaS company or a manufacturing company. You can even explain what type of data you already have. And already in a few minutes, you have a blueprint on how to do your headcount, and then you can do that. And Siki, you see that I didn't give any confidential information, right?
That's right. Amazing.
So that's here. I'm curious also in the chat what people think, because a lot of problem people meet when they use those AI tools is I cannot use it because I am not allowed to put confidential information inside. And the example I just show you is like if us two, we meet at a barbecue this weekend, and I'm asking you because you are an expert in headcount planning, and I'm asking you how to do it. You will have described it the same way, maybe not as fast and not as detailed, but I will have learned so much from you. And here, in the same way that I've done it with ChatGPT, without that I give you any information about my employees. So that's the level 1. I don't know if there is any question on this level 1 from the Q&A. Do you see anything? Or if you have questions yourself, Siki.
I think we have some questions, but we can hold that for the end. It's more about tools, and I know we're going to get to that. But I am really excited to hear what level 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10 are.
Okay. So if we go on the next level is to really play with data, because here I still had to collect the data. I still had to manually go in Excel and build this model. So imagine that you have sales and you have also the marketing spend. So you have a file where you see your historical sales and your marketing spend. And you know from your experience, you know there is a correlation between those two. So the more you increase your marketing spend, the more you have sales. The thing is, there are so much data that is really hard for us humans to really identify the correlation. So we are going to use AI and machine learning to do that. And machine learning is really scary for a lot of people because they think and they disconnect their mind when they hear machine learning. But when we do forecast, all of us in finance, what we do is we look at the past and see if we understand the past to identify trends and correlations. And so we learn from the past to create a forecast. So that's human learning. We just read, we talk with people, and we create from that a forecast. Machine learning does the same. It's just that it reads data and can read much more than us, can also have much more complex ways of reading the data and interpreting the data. But a simple linear regression is just a correlation between two variables. So here, marketing spend and sales. And it's not rocket science. It's really like what we do is just a robot is going to do that for us. So reading the historical data to have the forecast. So let me show you an example. So here I have I need to close this one. So I have here the level number 2. So we are going to use machine learning. And I have this file with my historical data, my sales, and my marketing expenses. And so as you can see in this file, it's really simple. So here, the first step is to be able to upload the data if you have a contract with ChatGPT Enterprise or you have fake data. But here, the assumption is you have an enterprise contract, so you can upload. And after, I'm going to show you how you can do that without uploading. So I give a bit of context. So I'm an FP&A analyst, and I want to forecast my sales for the next 2 years. And on top of that, I want also to calculate different scenarios. One where the marketing spend decreased, another one where the marketing spend increased by 10% and 20%. So what is happening first? ChatGPT doesn't know how to read an Excel file. So it asks Python, hey Python, you know Excel, can you read for me Excel file? And then after that, it will code Python to do the forecasting for us. So here we can see that with this coding, I get my 3 scenarios calculated for us. With the scenario 1, 2, 3, and the scenario 3 is obviously the one with the 20% increase. So we can see for the next years what is the impact of this scenario. And I can improve that because it was the first iteration, and we learn with AI that you cannot have everything at best with the first iteration. So I can ask on top to improve this visualization with a better graph where I see also the historical data. And you can go on here and ask, for example, to explain that to your board, to explain what is the model, to explain also basically how did you build that. But here you could see how I use AI to do the forecast for us. And basically here, the scenarios are based on if I increase the marketing spend, there is a correlation and an impact on the sales. So this marketing spend will impact the sales based on these 3 scenarios. What do you think?
Very interesting. Very interesting. How do you think it handles more complex models? And can it support just tops down, or can it also do bottoms up types of models where it's like more driver based?
Yeah. So that's where it actually start to be, I think, limited. We have
Yeah.
four problems when you do that in ChatGPT. The
Mm,
first one is confidential data,
right.
meaning a lot of us don't have a ChatGPT Enterprise contract.
Yeah.
The second one is your data. Do you have
Mm,
big data? Like, are you a SaaS company with huge Stripe files of CSV files?
right.
Or is your data stored somewhere else, like in Data Cube? The third one, imagine having every day to go on this forecast and forecasting like all of the lines of your P&L with like 10, 20 different chatbot discussion. Like that's not really first auditable because nobody can look
Mm,
after you. How did you do your work? And also it's not scalable. So that's where what we need from the AI is not to do inside those LLMs the calculations, but more use a better tool, which is actually Python, which is really good to calculate and to process mass data.
mm,
And to we are going to replicate um, the same model on with this model. Let me show you how we are. Yes, so we are going to solve these four problems thanks to Python. So these four problems: confidentiality of data, auditability, large data, and scalability, by using the same prompt. But you see in green, I added something else. Instead of uploading my file, I'm going to explain and give context to ChatGPT about how my file look like. But note again, no confidential information here given. And then I'm going to explain what to do. So to generate the code, and also, how I ask about the graphs in the second iteration, I'm going to ask that directly here because I know that I want that from the code. What I will have as an output is the code. And here, ChatGPT is really good if we want to draft an email and we can copy and paste this email and send it to a human. But ChatGPT is not good to tell us what to do in Excel because we have to click everywhere and still work for us. But here we are having another type of language. So a language where the math, the file can be done, the work can be done. And when this can be done, I can go in my environment, so forecast sales in Google Colab or Visual Studio, just copy and paste this code where here you are in your confidential environment and you have here the same type of graph. So a bit different, but you see the historical in blue. And then you have the three scenarios with the year 25, we have the increase in marketing spend, and the year 26, and again, an increase. And I could adjust that because that was, again, just the first iteration. And the advantage here, my boss can look my work because my boss can have access to the notebook. I can here increase the amount of data that it has because I could put much more data with Python. It can process much more data. I can also here scale that to have every day, or even if I have live data, every hour I could have a live forecast. And so here, this is the solution where you want to build internally a solution using AI and scale it. It's to
mm.
go with Python, but let ChatGPT do the code for you because also doing linear regression in Excel, now you have Python in Excel. There are some plugins, but Python is the right place to do machine learning with your data, especially if you have big data.
Yeah, we have a bunch of customers, and we do see sometimes the very sophisticated financial teams. They end up using pandas and Python, and it's always a joy to see what they do. Is this something that you would recommend most finance professionals start using? And if so, like how, and are there more sophisticated algorithms that you would recommend for forecasting?
Yeah. So I think Excel has shown the limit especially with AI and machine learning, like you start to have Python in Excel. But if you want to start using and reaping the benefits from AI, it's much better to go in Python because it's made for that, for the amount of data. And you can use algorithms that exist. For example, these ones here. So those ones, which are more complex algorithm, which, for example, there is seasonality or random forest with multiple decision trees, but you don't need to know how to code that. You just ask a generative AI tool to code it for you. And if you are, I would say, like curious enough, you will understand how this algorithm work because they are so public. So many people talked about that you just research, and after half an hour, you understood how this algorithm works. For example, Profit by Python is actually just using a trend plus a seasonality by day, week, and year. So once you have like this in mind, you understand how this model works. And Prophet, for example, looks like this at the end. So quite easy to understand how it works, meaning you have the black dots are the actual data, and then you have the blue cloud is the trend with the seasonality inside. And this,
Oh, that's cool.
you can do that with just a mini code here. And the data behind is not like amazing data with like 10 tabs with million of lines. It's just two columns with date left column and sales right column. So it's accessible to everybody. And I will encourage everybody to break the mental barrier of not trying. Like, try what I just showed you because I myself never learned Python. I just learned it together with ChatGPT, and I broke a lot of problems thanks to that. And if we want to go further and think about mini robots you want to start to build in the future, Python is going to be one of the enabler for this because Python can have access to data through APIs, and also you can just script your own bot, and also calling OpenAI to do some work with NLP. So this is really how to say that, how you finance teams will really be able to use AI.
And in what situations would you recommend people do like this sort of top-down forecasting versus like, modeling all of the relationships and like seeing what happens like from the bottoms up in something like Excel?
So for me, first, I see a lot of people trying to put financial statements in somewhere like either in ChatGPT or even in their Excel and trying to forecast everything in the same way. I worked 15 years in finance, and you never plan all of the financial statement line items in the same way because all of them have different behaviors. Inside your sales, you have probably different products that have different behaviors. So try to go to, I would say, like 10 to 15 items that you can forecast, and where probably like in your sales you'll have like 3 categories of products that you plan. Then in your standard cost you have either like a direct correlation with the products, so just like a margin per product. So like this, if you plan your sales, you just need to define your profit margin. Then after you have marketing, maybe depending on sales, you have standard cost, structure cost, and then you have maybe R&D. You have your head counts. So those are like 5 to 10 items that you can plan. And for each of them, you can either use mathematical calculation with, every year 10%, or you can start using some algorithm to plan line by line the items. But don't start to plan everything with one algorithm. Like, that's, I think, first, too complicated, and second, really hard to explain.
Got it. So looking ahead, where do you see AI taking us in forecasting, and how do you think it's going to change the way people understand and use your data?
So I think first, if people can do the forecast with machine learning by themselves and not just like putting in a machine and just getting the result without understanding, it will lower the entry to start using it, but
Hmm.
also allow much more possibilities because then instead of having just one file with 10 items to plan, or instead of having just like the historical data of the last 3 years, you start to feed more and more data to have forecasts that are more accurate, but also more dynamic. I talked, for example, with Microsoft, who are they are the pioneers in terms of like big companies that implemented, I think 4 or 5 years ago, the first machine learning models for forecasting. And they went from a process that took all of the sales team and the finance teams, I think like 10 days per month, to in a few hours, the machine learning forecast was done, proposed to finance. Finance still adjusted because you have parameters that are still manual because there's still information that are not in the model. And then finance could, in 2 hours, give the forecast to the headquarters. And the way they build that is they went so the headquarters ask all of the local offices how do they forecast, which information they take, and they started to build based on the experience from all of the different offices a model that takes a lot of different data, and not only financial data but also macro data, also data from the customers.
Hmm.
And they built from this a model that can be called live. And from this model, then there is, I think, like 4 or 5 different scenarios that you can use, because you can choose if you want just the data, or if you want some manual input, or if you in the data what type of data you want to take. And after, the finance or the CFO will have the responsibility to propose a forecast. And
Very cool.
Microsoft could do that with a data scientist team,
Yeah.
with a big consultant. But if we scale down at SME level, I think now with the help of AI, so a LLM to code, and Python calling algorithm to start doing machine learning, you could start doing that at your scale. And I will also recommend, don't start to change everything you have been doing until now, but rather you take your revenue, you take maybe one product that you understand really well, where you think is a good candidate because you have good data and you think you can use the algorithm. Then on the side of your normal forecast, you start using machine learning to plan this product every month. And then you start comparing if your machine learning has better results. So if you are more accurate compared to the actual data, than your old forecast. And then when you start to having proven track record that your forecasting model with machine learning start to be more accurate, then you can start showing that to your boss and start to educate people slowly. And at one point, it's not even you who are going to push for it. Everybody is going to say, let's take the machine learning model because we are always more accurate with it. And the time that you have educated people, they will be mature to take the decision because they will have understood it.
Very cool. Well, I want to save some time for questions. So thanks for all of that really helpful information. I'll invite Brandon back up for some Q&A.
All right. Thank you so much, Nicholas and Siki. We have a handful of questions in the Q&A panel, so I'm going to pull them on stage. If you have a question that you'd like to ask Nicholas or Siki, please feel free to type it in the Q&A panel. Our first one is from Paul Moore. And so Paul is asking, how do you address the risks of AI hallucinations where the output might look reasonable but is fundamentally flawed?
Yeah. So that's why there is a big change since you have advanced analytics inside ChatGPT. It's not a black box that you have behind you that gives you a result. You see exactly the code that is written. So exactly like an Excel formula, but here is a Python formula where you know the input of data because you gave the Excel file, and you know the process. So you see the formula, and then you see the output. And so because you can audit all of this, then you lower the risk of the hallucination. The only hallucination is a misinterpretation of what you ask in the formula. Meaning, if you say, I want an increase of 5% on the marketing spend, maybe it understood 5% per year, but you meant 5% over the period. And so the formula is not the one you expected. But you can adjust that by looking at the formula, then asking to correct it, and then verifying again after if the formula inside Python is the correct one.
Yeah, just to add to that, I would say, I get this question about hallucinations a lot because I tweet a lot about AI and obviously finance. But I would say the thing about hallucinations is that humans hallucinate too. They mishear things, they get things wrong, they misunderstand, and you have processes in place to fix those hallucinations, to double check them. And so that is still a necessary part, even more so if you use AI. And another thought here is that, if you're thinking about using AI, it's really important to understand what these transformer LLM type of models are good at and aren't good at. They're sort of good at some of the things that humans are good at. They have a good sense for common sense. What is the most likely thing that is going to impact revenue margin? They're just terrible at doing math. They're good at writing code because there's a lot of code, but math it can't do in their head any more than humans can. And so what you want and our approach at Runway and using AI is, when you ask the Runway a question like, how do I double revenue? It can give you a good sense of like what levers to pull because that's context, but the calculation is done manually by a model. So those are the two things I would think about.
Awesome. Thank you both. Thank you, Paul, for the question. Our next one is from Ross and Nicholas, I believe is when you were showing ChatGPT here. So will ChatGPT be able to return the same forecast, but with values instead of a visualization?
Yes, I ask visualization because in a presentation like this is easier than if everybody start to reading a table. And it's also like in financial storytelling, a table is really hard to read, but a graph is instantly clear about where are going the scenarios. If you ask the result in a table or in an Excel file, you get it as well. So it's just about which output you ask.
Yeah, I want to be clear about like what you were saying, right? So ChatGPT, what Nicholas was showing is ChatGPT was writing code to process this file and this data. It doesn't, ChatGPT natively doesn't have support for these files, but it's able to write code to process the data that's given and put it in a graph form or do some regressions. And so it's not doing anything inherent into the system, but it can do anything Python does.
Thank you, Ross.
Basically, it told Python, can you make a graph from this? Yeah.
Awesome. The next one is from Zishan. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but really good question. Will AI replace analysts?
So the question is, if you take two analysts, one is using AI and one is not using AI, which one is going to stay? Because I think you will still need people that leverage the tools. And if we look at finance and you look 20, 30 years ago, the FP&A function didn't exist, for example. If you look 60 years ago, probably like the controller function, the tax function didn't exist. So the complexity of finance evolved, and then all of these positions were created. So the roles in finance evolve, and some of the tasks will be done more and more by robots, which is good for us because who wants to spend time and time like just compute and compute figures and read receipts? But some tasks where you need to think through, you need to understand the context, you need to talk to all of the other departments to start modeling, which is in real life happening inside your models, and have also still a model that humans understand. Well, for this, you will have people that can leverage technology, but also their human skills, and they will stay and they will perform and outperform much better than the average.
That's right. I mean, so three stories, right? I think what Nicholas is saying, there's a really interesting quote like, AI is going to take your job. A person using AI is going to take your job, which I think is definitely true. I think there was another observation I think Sam Altman had recently where if you look at what AI can do in the legal world today, you can basically replace most of the hours that lawyers spend, and these are hundreds of dollars an hour with an AI, but you don't see them actually being replaced. And the reason is what you're paying for is not just a contract work. You're paying for a human standing behind the work that's being done. And I think that's certainly going to be true, probably even more so for finance. And the third thing I would note is a lot of people said, when spreadsheets came out that, oh, like CPAs are going to be done, accountants are going to be done. The opposite happened, right? It made it more impactful and more widespread. And so I don't think it's really about replacing it. I think it's really about increasing the leverage and utility of finance with AI. And that's what's going to be happening over the next 5 to 10 years, just like spreadsheets.
Great question. The next one that we have is from Jessica. Jessica's asking for finance staff or accountant. What would be a piece of advice on where to start on AI/CPT? And I think here
GPT.
Jessica's referring to GPT.
So I think first, if you didn't use yet ChatGPT, start with an approach that is called AI first approach. Meaning every task that you are doing today without LLM, start to doing it with an LLM. For example, you need to write an email, start first with an LLM. You need to start doing a headcount forecasting model, start with LLM. And that will force you to learn what an LLM can do. And then once you have mastered that, once you have also understood the prompt engineering behind that will optimize the output you get each time you want to work with those LLMs, then you go to the next step, which is what I showed is AI is not only ChatGPT, AI is also looking at data with machine learning to show you trends, to show you models that can forecast for you. And if you go with Python, that's the easiest way to start machine learning. And you let ChatGPT code for you, and you start with simple data. You start on your own, you start documenting yourself, and really like step after step, you will become much further ahead from all of your colleagues because you are going to do a first AI approach based model.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm observing about AI is like, just like every generation of technology, the kids who are grown up with AI, who only know AI tools, they have a head start. And the difference isn't that they're smarter, obviously, or more experienced. It's that they just have different habits, right? And the thing about ChatGPT in particular is that, it doesn't do anything until you talk to it, right? And so you have to actually know and develop intuition for what it can and can't do. And so, for example, like if you've grown up and you are used to using Google to find every piece of information, that's going to be your default. You're going to be less likely to using oops, can you hear me? Okay, cool. I got this red. And you're going to be less likely to use ChatGPT by your default. And so forming that default and like so, what I ask is like if I have a question, but I don't know anything, like I'm going to try to force myself to have a habit to ask ChatGPT first. And I actually built a GPT in the ChatGPT store. So if you go to explore GPTs and your ChatGPT, you see there's a list of GPTs under education. There's a GPT called Universal Primer, which I built. I think it's like number one, number two at any given point in time. And that is one of the best ways to learn anything hard. So that's my advice: is just to form a habit as much as you can.
Oh, sorry there. I having some a little bit of technical difficulties. Uh, Thank you. The next one is from Josh, and this is a great one actually. Josh is asking, are there any differences between ChatGPT, Claude, and other best-in-class models when it comes to automating FP&A tasks?
Yeah, this question comes often. And before understanding which models are the best, you need to learn how to use these models. Because if you want to drive to see your mom and you are going to take the car, if you never learn how to drive, then no car will help you go to see your mom. So first, learn how to use these models. If you really now are comfortable, well, personally, I have my own opinion. You need to understand which one do really well on which scenarios. And for this, when you take a step back, Gemini is built by Google. Google is the best at search, the best at YouTube, and it's incorporated in all of your Google Suite model. So if you are already really using Gmail, Google Doc, Google Sheets, and you like to do search on YouTube, then use Gemini. If you are in Microsoft and your company is using Azure, then it's better to stay with Copilot. If you have no preferences and you like to use the first movers, like I do, then OpenAI for me is the best because you always get the first innovation. Like GPTs, they were the first one. Advanced analysis, they are still the only one doing that. You have now Canva, you have the O1 model, but it can still be that it changed in 6 months and then another model comes with better functionalities. And I think in terms of really like results, they are all at pars. What you ask is really more determining. So your input has like 99% on the impact of the output, and maybe the model will have 1%.
I would say, like, if you look at LLM Sys, there are this website, they have rankings for different use cases. Generally, they're all at par, like Nicholas said. I think Claude edges out OpenAI on coding today, but otherwise, for the types of tasks for FP&A, it's pretty much the same.
Awesome. The next one, these questions are moving in real time as people are voting for them. The next one is from Abdullah. And Abdullah is asking, from a tool standpoint, as software vendors continue to embed AI capabilities within their respective tools, example, predictive analytics with machine learning and FP&A/CPM, is there still a value add in tackling the same AI-powered use case by using a newer approach, such as using ChatGPT, Python, Google, Colab, etc.?
So I think in production mode, meaning if you have access to a great FP&A tool that already have possibilities to build machine learning algorithm within your data and everything is connected, then you should use that. But the advantage of using ChatGPT, Python, and Google Colab together is you first don't need to wait for this tool. Second is like a sandbox for you, so you can try and see real time and play around without breaking anything. And third, I think it still shows you how this algorithm work, and so you will learn by doing, by putting your hands inside. And I think it's really important when after you are presenting the result of a forecast in front of the board, it's not the same. And we all know that if you build yourself the presentation and the Excel, it's not the same that if your team did it and you just got the result 5 minutes before presenting, you are not the same level of confidence. So I will say there is a learning process inside of doing it by yourself. But after, of course, those tools would be normally better than using ChatGPT, Python, and Google Colab, and also easier for a bigger team and for a wider use.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, like, 3 points here. Like, one is the value of using AI in general in ChatGPT extends beyond finance, right? I think, like, that is just an important life skill to have. Just like people who didn't know how to use Google had its heads up over people who did. But that said, we can't have every customer be a customer Runway. So if you're not a customer Runway or you're not using a finance tool, like, having these skills are important as well. And the third point is, it really depends on what is the goal of your forecast, right? So for something like a top-down forecast where you want to be very sophisticated and use machine learning algorithms to have, like, your 2 years be very data-driven, I think this is still an important method. For example, we don't actually support that use case, right? But for a different use case where what you're trying to do is understand causality of where you're going to go. So what you're trying to figure out is, if we invest, if we double our marketing spend 6 months from now, or if we increase hiring and engineering versus product, what does that do to the business? Then you're going to want to have a model that is able to understand the causality, the structure model, the context of your business. And that's where a CPM or FP&A tool can add value that is going to be different from sort of a top-down forecast. And the top-down forecast is also, like, extremely important if you just want to, like, there are certain use cases, for example, for Facebook, where they need to have a very good idea of where demand is going to go seasonally. That is extremely important, and that's probably better done through a machine learning algorithm in Python that is augmented and created by ChatGPT.
All right. The next one I have here is for Angus, and we'll do probably two more of these, and then I have one last question for both Nicholas and Siki before we close today. Angus is asking, what are your tactics for determining which lines or areas of a financial model are good candidates for deeper financial analysis or machine learning?
Mm.
If you're using this dual approach, how easy are these to integrate with different FP&A solutions, such as Excel versus a newer platform like Runway or Data Rails? And Siki, you mentioned Runway uses a dual approach here.
Siki, you want to start with the runway?
Yeah, sure. So I think, as I mentioned, there's some use cases where you just want accuracy, right? So if you're, trying to do a top-down forecast for a large user base um, around seasonality, then a top-down approach is probably best. And so the way people integrate with Runway, we basically integrate with everything. We have integrate with literally 700 different things. People can integrate however they want. For example, you can, if people want to do that forecast in Google Sheets somehow, we can just pull that in directly as a driver. And so we that is not Runway focused. There's different ways of doing it. Our focus is more about understanding and decision making. So what are the key causal drivers of your business and how do you plan? So for example, what is a product roadmap, right? A product roadmap is basically uh, you're going to build features that change the core drivers of your business, whether that's conversion rate, engagement rate, your average contract value. And as you work on those products and as those impacts happen, you can understand what it's going to do to your business. That's a very different use case than a top-down use case. This is more about a bottoms-up understanding and how you're going to impact your business. And I think the two can go hand in hand. But like I mentioned, we integrate with absolutely everything. So it's pretty easy to integrate something like that with Runway.
Yeah, and to share maybe an anecdote, in the previous business I was working, you just needed that one client decide to delay a project that the year could be 20% better or 20% worse. And this you cannot plan with machine learning, because if not, then your range is plus or minus 20%. What you need to have is humans behind that with their best knowledge and best intuition will also make the work to grab the information from the client and close them down on maybe an alternative solution that will decrease this range. And this will be done more manually without any machine learning. But then you are maybe a supermarket where historically you have so much data on your marketing campaigns. You have data on based on the weather or the macroeconomic data, how people are buying. Then those are better candidates to forecast your revenue and your cost of goods sold. But then this supermarket, maybe he's also negotiating to buy a land to extend, and then it's a big capex. And that, again, you cannot plan with machine learning. Is more going to be humans sitting on a table and deciding what do we forecast based on the strategy.
All right. The last question from the audience, I'll pull up on stage here. Uh, this is a good question. Would love to hear both your takes here. So I hear you mentioned Python. Does that mean the following statement is before its time as it relates to the C-suite convenience? Jensen Huang, as we all know, is the CEO of NVIDIA, has said that coding may no longer be a priority for young people looking to get into tech. He believes that AI advancements will make it possible to create computing technology that doesn't require programming.
Yeah, so I think the quote was, it was an error to put every kid in coding school, because it's not us human who need to learn how to code, is the robot and the computers. They need to learn human language, and that's what is going. It's already happening, but still, when you want that you have a model like what I just showed you, and also you want to understand it, then of course you are going to express it with your words. And there are also FP&A tools where you type what you want. So you say, oh, my revenue should be my marketing spend plus also how many sales representatives I have. So the combination of the two, that's my sales scenario. And then you can code that with formulas behind, and then you can see and verify the model. I still think that we are still in between, And I don't think in finance, especially, a lot of people will accept that just because somebody prompted the LLM, that the output is validated by everybody. You will need to see the intermediary steps where you understand the model and the mathematical calculation.
Yeah, this is a hard one to predict, right? I think I could go either way on this. I think what he's saying is true, not true yet. Is true in some sense, right? Like the great thing about AI is that it allows you to interact with the computers in a way that has never been possible before, which is that it allows you to talk to it like a person. And that's what makes coding really, really difficult because you can't do that. And so that's sort of like the fuzziness of the interaction is something new, and in theory could replace engineering. The flip side of that is, we have many things that technology enables where you don't have to do it, right? Like, do you really need to learn how to like use a hammer or like, understand how materials work, how design works? You don't have to, but that understanding lets you as humans create new things, and have an advantage over people who are using AI without that understanding. And AI is a great tool to teach you that. So, there's one school of thought that says like basically AI is going to do all the work for you, which is possible. In which case, I mean, what is any of us going to do, right? You could say, hey Runway, hey AI, make Runway, and it'll do it in 5 years. Where does that leave everyone or Windows OS? The other school of thought here is that humans are still going to want to create, and we're still going to want to understand, and AI is going to get better and better at helping us do those things. And in that world, having a deeper understanding is always helpful.
And which one are you following, Siki?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go on a tangent here, and I think like I think it's the latter, right? So if you look at the evolution of technology, um, so the example I like to give you, if you think about the concept of a bag, right? Bags used to be expensive; they were hard to make, right? But like with industrialization, bags are cheap. Like bags are plastic; they're basically free. But you look at what has happened to bags, you can buy, as industrialization happened, you can buy bags that are like $50,000. Why are they $50,000? It's because we know a human made it. We know there's craft in it. And I think AI is going to accelerate that process where as everything becomes free and cheap and abundant, we are going to demand and want the things that are made by humans because we know they're made by humans. And that is my general philosophy on how the value of things will change. And I believe that's true for software too.
Awesome. Well, Nicolas, Iki, I have one last question for you both. We obviously covered a lot today. If I take a step back and I think about financial analysis and this market as a whole, all of us here have different levels of comfortability, leveraging AI in our day to day. What's your closing advice for all of us looking to better our skills and how we can best leverage these new technologies?
So I think we demonstrated today that if you go first by asking AI how to do the task and how to help you, is a great way to discover a lot of capabilities that you could before ignore. So having like a first AI based approach, I think everybody needs to start doing that. And it could be as simple as taking a notepad or Excel file and writing every 50 minutes what you just did. And in the evening or the day after, like going through the list and tell yourself, okay, now I'm going to try it with AI. And maybe you will get it faster or not. Maybe you will get it better or not. But probably a lot of time you will get it faster and better. And you have increased your knowledge much more rapidly because you have done it with your hands. And if on top of that, you create like a mini group within your company where you share those best practices, then I can promise you that as a team, you will grow so fast in this knowledge and the work will be more fun. You will go home earlier and you will go home also happier.
Yeah, I would say just form a habit. I think the thing that I think most people misunderstand about AI is that it seems like very difficult and mysterious because software is hard, right? Coding is hard, and AI seems like more complicated software. So a lot of people have, I think, hesitancy to use it, but it's actually like the opposite. It is far more accessible for you to create tools, for you to learn from AI if you can form a habit to do so. It's never been more accessible. And so I think the number one thing, especially if you're not like 18 years old, you grew up with ChatGPT or something, is be aware of yourself and the habits that you have and the tools that you use. Because our people our age, we grew up using tools that are just not AI native, and there is an AI native tool for everything now. And so the habit and changing the mindset is probably the most important thing.
And
Absolutely.
there are a lot of people that also do the work for us, meaning there are people like spending hours trying to figure out how to use these tools. So follow the right people on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and just like also like having your feed with smart people will help you also learn faster and try by yourself what you got from these people.
Speaking of which, where can people find you online, Nicolas?
I think LinkedIn, everybody like just type Nicolas Boucher and you'll find me. I share every day a lot of tips for finance and AI in finance.
Cool. And I am Blader on Twitter, Blader. I mostly tweet about random stuff, but a lot of AI, a lot of finance. Jeff Bezos and Sam Altman follow me for my AI takes. So that's me on Twitter.
Awesome. Well, Nicholas, Siki, thank you so much again for your time today. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's session. If you have any additional questions, I know there were a lot, feel free to reach out to both Nicholas and Siki on social, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.